Good evening, everyone. This is Clyde from Africa Media Australia with the Afroshine live show. Thank you very much again for the opportunity that is being made available to us to talk to you about important issues that affect the lives of African Australians here in Australia as well as beyond. Tonight on Afroshine Live, we're talking about the issue of trust and how that impacts on progress in the community, progress on a personal level. When you talk about trying to address community development issues, you need to look at how people can work together, how people can do business together, how people can work on a particular project that can help them to make progress both on an individual level as well as on community level. So we're inviting you to comment. And if you want to also be able to actually make a live comment on video, you can do that. Just contact us and we'll send you a link where you can potentially, you know, contact us and we will be able to connect you on the show live and you'll be able to make a comment. So Afroshan Live, it's obviously a new show and we're encouraging a lot of African Australians to participate. It's an interactive show where we will encourage people to be able to comment and give their opinions on whatever is happening in the community. Today, we're talking about the issue of trust. Trust is very, very important, especially when you're talking about a migrant community. We have come from various countries in Africa and now living in Australia, and we have more chances of being successful if we can work together. Teamwork is obviously very important, but teamwork is only possible if people can trust one another. If people don't trust each other, it becomes a very difficult exercise to do anything together. And when people don't work together, they are unable to unite their strength, and therefore success becomes very difficult in that context. And I suppose it's all an issue about mindset. Our mindset as we live in Australia and with the society the way it is, the settings of the society are what they are. They may be different from where we may be coming from, but how do we adapt into the Australian society, and what do we do to give ourselves the best chance of becoming successful? This is a market-driven, competitive society. Therefore, the mindset ought to be different in comparison to some of the places that we may have grown up in, where things are not as competitive, things are not as people are not as aggressive in pursuing their individual interest. So when you come to a first world country with a capitalist inclination, where there's individualism everywhere, and people want to just make as much money as possible, because you can't survive in this country without money. And if you only rely on social security, you're probably not in the best position to make the most of your life. So how do you adapt in this fast-moving society where everything just goes so fast? That mindset, most of us come from a situation or societies where things are dominated by traditional cultural beliefs. But are they still relevant in a society such as Australia? The mindset is also in a lot of circumstances determined by the education that we get. Are we getting education that is suited for the challenges that we're facing as a migrant population in Australia, with all the luggage and baggages that we bring into this country? The mindset is also a lot of time a product of the environment that we put ourselves into. Are we creating an environment that is fertile and that is enabling us to make the most of what we can in this country? The mindset is also in a lot of ways affected by other influencing factors such as religious beliefs and all that sort of thing. So when you put that into that whole context, it becomes quite challenging to look at how all these things can be adjusted to enable African Australian communities, African Australian families, and individuals to be able to live their best. And now the media is already telling too many stories about the negative things happening within African Australian community. But how do we own our narrative, especially talk about the positive? This is something that has been quite recurring over the years, where the broader media that doesn't find anything positive, or really rarely talks about the positive stories that are happening in our community. But more than just talking about positive stories, how do we pretty much just equip ourselves to be able to be in the best position, not only to take advantage of the opportunities, for example, in the economic area, where we can obviously become the best we can if we learn, if we get trained, we get educated, and we are able to do whatever that we need to do to climb the social ladder. It is a society, as I said earlier, that has its own opportunities and challenges. Are we educating our children, our young people, and ourselves really as professionals in the best way that will enable us to capture the opportunities that are available to Australia? So I'm going to be asking you to comment if you want to comment in relation to how do we enable ourselves, our communities, our young people to best take the advantage of the opportunities and challenges that exist in this society. We have a lot of community associations, we have a lot of churches, we have a lot of religious organizations, a lot of entertainment groups, sports group. All those should be settings where we train, we educate, and empower ourselves to be able to capture everything that we can in terms of how we can promote the best abilities and capabilities and develop our capacity to be able to contribute to the Australian society. Why is it that we don't seem to trust ourselves so much? And I've been around for quite some time. We start organizations. We have a lot of energy to work to trying to do things. But as soon as we start putting things together, quite often, very quickly, things get quite tough. People don't seem to trust each other. We come from a collective mindset. Last time I was interviewing Dr. Michael Akindeju, who was talking specifically about this issue. Although we come from a collective mindset in Africa, where we live together, we live in large families, we live in communities, and we trust each other quite a lot of times. But when it comes to the diaspora community, or when we come to Australia or some of these other developed countries, that trust just seemed to evaporate. We're very suspicious about each other. People can come up with a very good project, but they don't receive community support. People can, come up with very good ideas that needs to be supported because it can help advance the community. But those sort of things are not always supported by the community. There's a lot of jealousy. There's a lot of things that it really, discourages people to come up with ideas and projects that can help advance our communities. We would want to be able to see African Australian millionaires, African Australian professionals, and African Australian politicians, and people who are doing quite well, and all those people at different levels, they need to be supported by the community for them to be able to achieve that. But why is it that not many of us are giving support to those who are doing a lot? I know there are a lot of people in the community sector, for example, who are coming up with very good projects to trying to help young people, to trying to help families that are doing it tough. But when they bring those projects to the communities, very quickly the politicking gets into the picture, and not much is going forward. So do we have a problem of trust, and how do we resolve that? Because I think when you talk about development, and Afroshine Live is really about focusing on development issues, business issues, leadership, education, in that sort of positive angle. What do we need to do in order to facilitate that environment of trust when we need to work together, because a lot of us are actually quite intelligent. But what we can achieve on an individual level is certainly going to be less than what we can achieve on a you know collective and partnership level. I may have my strength, and somebody else may have a different strength. When you put it together, you do more. But why is trust a big issue within African Australian communities, even in fields such as, for example, in religious field? And I am a Christian, and I go to church, and I have a lot of friends who are pastors and all that. But even at that level, where people should actually trust them because they're all working for God, so to speak, they can't trust each other. They can't work together. Business is the same. I am also a business owner, a small business owner, and I've tried a number of times to trying to involve people who we can potentially work together. We do business that can complement each other. But when you contact them, and when you're trying to explain that we can achieve better things if we work together, again, on discourse level, on the narrative, when we're talking about it, people tend to agree, but they don't seem to deliver anything after that. So we do need to be able to identify those issues that are important, that are affecting our progress as a community here in Australia, and be able to tackle them as much as possible. This is a platform where we would like to invite people to come and talk about those issues, because ideas things and change in the society start with ideas, start with conversations. And once people come together through respectful conversation, they can start putting things together, and hopefully be able to deliver project that will add value into the lives of our communities. It's been almost 30 years since the Africans started coming in Australia en masse, and what is happening now. Those who are arriving now should benefit from the foundations that have been established by those who arrived 30 years ago, 20 years ago, or 10 years ago. So are we enabling that transfer of knowledge between generations, between different waves of migrants in our communities? Certainly, there is a gap that needs to be filled. And again, there's that generational gap between the older Africans and the younger ones. The younger ones don't seem to trust much the older Africans, and the older ones don't seem to know what's the best way to engage the younger Africans. And in that process, everybody's lost. We hear a lot of condemnation, or these people don't do this, these people don't do that. But it's not all negative. Things are starting to change a little bit. You see some steps where people are trying to make steps to actually work together and identify the issues that are common to us, and work together. I was speaking with a representative of the Jewish community lately, and he was telling me that people seem to think the Jewish community is actually quite cohesive. They work together, and they don't seem to have a problem. But he was telling me that they have just as many issues as any other community. They have their differences. There are some traditional or religious Jewish groups. Others who are more liberal. Others who so they have their differences. But what seemed to work for them when they come together is they agree that they need to work together once, because it's beneficial for all of them. And then they set up rules and principles that will guide them in that collaboration. And that seemed to work well, because there's a lot of motivation, there's a lot of commitment. They know that the Jewish community, the survival of that community, depends on how knitted together they are, how they can work together. Why can't we sort of learn that mentality and apply that for our own African Australian community? And that is something that I guess is subject to debate. And I would like to be able to hear your views if you are watching us and you want to be able to comment on some of these things, how we can sort of emulate what's working in other communities, including even some of the latest communities, such as the Indians, the Asians, who are working quite well when it comes to business, when it comes to many of things. They have their differences as well. So there's no community that has no issues in terms of working together, but some have more issues than others, and I suppose it will benefit us to be able to address those that specifically apply to us, and how we can change the mindset. So that was the first part of what I wanted to cover today. And then the next part is managing crisis. Right now, Corona is obviously affecting everybody, and is affecting some groups more than others. In the US, for example, many of you would know that the Black community is being affected a lot more than the rest of American society. So if there are sort of inherent social issues, social inequalities, that obviously will transpire in how people are being affected by this corona crisis. In Australia, I don't think we have that issue like in America, but the health side of corona is only one thing. There's the economic and social side that is not as talked about as it should be, but there's a whole lot of issues that are going to be coming post-corona with regards to the economy, when we talk about employment and or social and family issues that will result from that. So how are we preparing ourselves? So, mental illness type of aspect of the corona crisis. A lot of people are in isolations. In isolation, and some people really don't get the help they need. As a community, the African Australian community, what are we doing to assist those who are most in need, and to enable ourselves and equip ourselves to, I suppose, ride this wave of crisis with the least amount of difficulty, and it is something that is quite challenging. I know that there is actually a line, a group of African Australians who are providing mental illness, counseling for those who may be affected, who may have mental illness issues, and that is a very good thing. But there are also many people who don't know that, and I've seen lately a few African students who came from Africa and studying in Australia who are also having difficulty because they don't know where to go in order to get assistance. It's good that the state government in Victoria, for example, and many other states in Australia are starting to do something to help international students. But the corona crisis is just the beginning. The health side of it is the beginning. There will be a lot more issues that we need to be addressed, and perhaps we need to find ways of equipping ourselves and enabling and empowering ourselves to be able to ride this crisis without too much difficulty. There's a degree of vulnerability. Our communities are quite vulnerable in some sense, where people don't have anyone they can go to in terms of proper counseling where there are issues. And also there was already an issue of unemployment, especially for young Africans before corona. It's going to get much worse after corona. Our young people, when they become unemployed, ultimately we will see a lot of issues that will be coming from that. What are we doing in order to minimize those issues as a community? And I know there are a lot of people with a lot of passion in the community to trying to help others. I see a lot of people with lots of energy trying to make a difference in the community. Are we now getting ready to address some of these issues that will come post-corona crisis? It's certainly that unemployment will be one big issue. And then also there is the education aspect, because many families are not always equipped to actually be able to assist their children to study remotely. Online study is not as easy as it may sound. Even before corona, there were a lot of families were having, a lot of parents were having issues helping their children to do homework and all that sort of thing. And the government, as part of the African Australian community plan, the Victorian African Community Plan, VACAP in short, has been trying to do some work in that space to enable many more Africans to be able to assist those parents and families who are having difficulty to help their children doing homework. And because of this online learning, which makes it a little more difficult, hopefully, hopefully we will get people with the relevant skills who may be able to assist others in this space. Are there any opportunities coming out of this corona crisis? Every crisis has two sides. There's the good and the bad. Every crisis comes with opportunities that can be um, taken. Exploited. And there are certainly some opportunities business-wise that people should think of post-corona. There will be a lot of people who would obviously be out of business. Out of work, and who may then think of starting a business because the economy will be going through some difficult time for at least a number of years, and finding employment may not necessarily be very easy. Perhaps, therefore, this is the time when, if you've been having dreams of starting a business, you may now consider, doing that, provided you are prepared. You've got some little funding, or you know how you can go ahead to do that. So we'll be having guests who will be talking about helping people to develop businesses, especially on the online space. Right now, because of all that has happened with Corona, you can expect exponential increase in business activities online, and that's something that those who may want to think of business can consider, to see how you can set up shops online. You can offer goods and services online, and that will only grow, because things like or organizations and businesses like Amazon and all that sort of people, they will be doing a lot more businesses, and therefore, whether you want to work as an affiliate or open your own Amazon shops, or just ideas, and we'll be having guests in the next few days or weeks that will be talking about how we can develop opportunities for online within the community. We certainly want to encourage people to think business, because when you run your own business, the degree of freedom, the degree of satisfaction you get is, and money, obviously, if that business is successful, is a lot more than what you get for employment. And again, with Corona, employment will only get not only difficult to actually obtain, but also you can lose it anytime. So Africans considering doing business should be able to do that. So we are working in connection with Afroshine professionals, where we will be sourcing a number of experts, whether that is accountant, business facilitators, and people with a variety of skills, to try to help others to look at business opportunities post-corona crisis. And obviously, this show will be focusing more also on the good stories, because as I said earlier in the introduction, there's already so much negativity around African communities. But are we ourselves promoting our own stories sufficiently, the positive stories? Because people sometimes underestimate how much influence they can have on others. If you're doing well in any particular field, sharing your story can have a significant impact on others, encouraging them to follow suit and be able to do that. So we will be trying to reach out to as many people as possible who may want to share their experience, their story, their achievement, as a means to influence positively the rest of the community in looking at how they can excel, or they can simply get into action to undertake things that will make a difference in their lives. Now, we'll talk also a little bit about the corona crisis, but how that is affecting Africa, because all of us are quite interested in what is happening in the mother continent. It's actually a very good thing that right now we have seen, some good things happening in Africa in relation to the corona crisis. There are not many people are dying. We were all sort of expecting there'll be a lot more casualties happening in the continent of Africa because of corona, but that's not the story. Most countries in Africa are handling the numbers quite well. Some are doing exceptionally well, and there's this corona organics sort of cure. Yes, of course, it hasn't been validated by the WHO. This is something that came out of Madagascar, and but many African countries are buying this herbal tea. I mean, herbal tonic, so to speak, that is apparently helping people who are affected by corona, as well as preventing being contaminated by the virus. So some very good news there. Africa is not just a continent to receive help from the rest of the world. It can also actually give that help, and we're seeing some sort of difference coming out of it. We hope that there'll be more good stories coming out of Africa. But is there anything that the diaspora can actually do to try and help with regards to corona in Africa? Well, there are certainly will be some good business opportunities as well, because of all this interruption with international trade, travel, and all that sort of thing. There will be ways where at some point, those with good ideas and money can actually utilize the opportunities that are being made available to develop businesses and make something out of this crisis in a positive way, because we shouldn't just be discouraged because of the fact that a lot of people are dying. But there are good things that will be happening. One of the good things about the corona situation is that, I would say, the silver lining, the explosion of online communication. People are doing Zoom everywhere, so we can now be in a much more interactive contact with people anywhere in the world, including in Africa, even though there may be some internet issues from time to time. But it's obviously important, and it's a very good thing that now the online meetings, the online communications, conversations is actually developing. And as I said earlier, that also can transpire through online businesses that can be taken care of. So that's something that we can look into to see how, from the community here in Australia, the broader African Australian community, which is growing, by the way. There's now over 400,000 people of African descent living in Australia, according to the last census. So that has been a big growth, and that presents many opportunities for business, whether in terms of food and cultural needs, and a whole host of things that those who have have a business mindset can utilize to meet the needs of the growing African Australian population. And a big chunk of that is actually here in Melbourne. So what are some of the opportunities that can be exploited to offer solutions, to offer goods and services to the growing African Australian population? Again, that will be some of the topics that we will discuss through this Afroshine live platform that we would like to see very interactive, and get many people to contribute and be able to help others through advice, education, and other means. So we're coming towards the end of this show. If you are watching, please make a comment, share the video, and if you have something that is touching your heart, something that you've wanted to talk about, we're inviting you to make contact with us on our platform. You can go on website. You can send us a message through inbox. You can also contact us through our WhatsApp. We'll put our number on this screen shortly. We want to be able to talk about what is happening in the society, do it live so that people can also contribute to that and give their opinion. And that interaction, that interactivity certainly will add value to what we are all doing in our walks of life. And we want to be able to add value into what is already being done and communicate that more broadly. Because one thing that is actually quite important is, and that is missing in many of our groups, is that we do quite a lot of work, whether it's in community related activities or even business or many things, but we don't seem to communicate well. In business, the marketing is quite poor, which is why many African businesses don't go very far. We don't market our businesses well enough, so we do need to find ways of improving that. When it comes to community related activities, there are a lot of people who do a lot of work, but they don't seem to communicate that work in the best possible way. Therefore, the efforts that are being done is not sufficiently bearing fruits. So we want to be able to change that by contributing with the skills that we have, the platforms that we have, to showcase the good stories, the differences that people are making. We know that there are Africans who are shining out there, and that's why we're calling this platform Afroshine Live. It's about talking to each other. It's about showing what we are doing, and maybe inviting people in the community to pay attention to things that deserve to be looked at, so that there is an improvement on our community wise. If we learn to work together, if we learn to trust each other, again, that was the theme of this show today. We need to learn to trust each other as we go on in doing our own activities in whatever area that we are operating in, but trying to get to know each other, to do more. And that networking aspect, being connected with other people who can add value to what you are doing. A lot of times we neglect that aspect. We just want to do our own thing in our own little corners. But those who are doing well in many areas of their lives, they know the value of network. Your network is your net worth, as they say. So if you're well connected with the right people, you're more likely to be successful in anything that you want to do. So whatever you are doing that is worth sharing with others, you can count on African Media Australia and through this specific show, Afroshine Live, to talk about it. We don't charge for that. We just want to be able to get the stories out and create a momentum in the society where we see people are doing things that need to be projected, showcased out there. We also want to invite African professionals who have skills, who may want to mentor younger Africans in any ways, to make contact with us. We are working with Afroshine professionals here in Victoria to facilitate mentorship that can be also done remotely, digitally, as well as physically, when we are able to meet again after this corona crisis is gone. So let's learn how to support each other. Let's learn how to trust each other. Let's learn how to work together, network, connect in meaningful ways, and be able to promote what we're already doing and the skills that we have, how we can utilize those to create and develop businesses. There's a really strong emphasis on this show to assist people in thinking business and doing business. We will not go very far in this country unless and until we develop economic power. Economic power will get us very far. If we only relying on simple employment, or for some people even just the social security, we're not going to be going anywhere. The African Australians need to make more efforts to be involved in entrepreneurship and business, and that is something that we would like to be able to promote throughout the community. And we've got organizations that we are working with who are ready, because sometimes it's just a matter of information. People don't really know where to start, how to start a business, and how to move forward. Some people have started, but they don't know how to go to the next level. It's sort of the business is stalling, they're not going anywhere. And the more we can benefit from the experience of others who may have gone through that path before, the better it is for those who are starting anew to be able to make less mistakes and achieve a better outcome. So those are some of the things that we'll be focusing on in relation to this show. And it's going to be happening, as we started, as I said earlier in the beginning, on Tuesday nights and Thursday night from 9 p.m. We hope that you will not only watch, but you will share the video, and you will also participate through Facebook. You can share your comment, but also you can contribute on video as a guest if you have something to comment. I'll see if I have any questions from the comment. Looks like there's no question tonight. So we will end this episode of Afroshine Live here, and we wish you a good night. Feel free to make comments and contact us if you would like to participate next time. Until next time, stay blessed. Thank you.